Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Complexity Weekend, December 2021 Heartbeat event. It's great that you're joining. We're really looking forward to this opening live stream and then hanging out with you in Gather for the rest of the Heartbeat first and second interval, which will be all interactive. So please enjoy the next few minutes of Michael Garfield's music, Future Fossils, and then we will see you in the organizer's opening live stream, and then the rest will be all interactive in Gather. So thanks again for joining. Please enjoy the music, and we will see you very soon. All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to the December 2021 Complexity Weekend Heartbeat. We are here and starting with an organizer's introduction and welcome. There'll be some slides followed by an interactive Jamboard section. And now you can hear me on the gather, but already they could hear me on the live stream. And we're just going to jump right in while I'm resizing some windows. Yana and then Sean, would you like to say hello?
Hi. Yana, you want to go first?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Complexity Weekend Heartbeat this December. And it's going to be nice and cozy, hanging out in Gathertown. And looking forward to seeing all of you.
How about Sean give an intro and then do what has to be done?
Yep.
I muted the person, so it's not having any effect, but go ahead, continue.
I love how chaotic we can get in here. I'm Sean. I'm a recurring organizer, facilitator, participant, and that's really all people need to know. I mean, I love this community. I love being a part of it.
Awesome. So thank you. You can, Sean, do what needs to be done, and we'll jump right in with the slides. So in this video, we're going to start with a introduction to Complexity Weekend, because every event there's always people who it's their total first time here, and that's awesome. Thanks for coming out. And there's also people who have not been here in a little while, so we want to share some of the recent updates and ongoing changes with our community of practice. And then there's the people who are here just every single event, so thanks as well. We'll talk about Complexity Weekend, and then we'll go into some of the specifics about the December 21 Complexity Weekend Heartbeat, the event you are at right now. So let's start with some of the general background on Complexity Weekend. And I'll also try to keep an eye on the YouTube live chat. So please feel free to write any questions or comments in there, and we'll share a link for the Jamboard soon. So history and initial conditions are very important for complex systems such as Complexity Weekend. And the first Complexity Weekend was in person. It was in San Francisco, California in May 2019. And we started with a vision to have a rhythm of recurrent cohort-based weekends. And then in the time between these weekends, every 6 months or so, there would be smaller, informal drop-in heartbeat events, which are like awesome times to reconnect with the community energy, share about your teams and your progress, and also for people who are just deciding whether they'd like to participate in a weekend, which is more of a commitment than just a heartbeat. And we've now completed 4 online weekends, 2 in 2020 and 2 in 21. Yana and or Sean, would you like to just give any comments on just the last month's weekend in November 21, or just any other aspects of the progression that you've seen?
Yana, you want to go first? I got some comments about 2021 after.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I think 2021 was really the first year we did the full cycle that our community practice is really holding ourselves to. 2 weekends for the year, and then 10 monthly heartbeats. We might have done it in 2020. I feel like the heartbeats maybe started a little late in the year. You have to correct me, Daniel. But it was really the first like full series, and our community grew a ton, I think, in the year. And I'm really excited to talk about 2022 and what's changed and how we're organizing and how people can step up to facilitate and organize. 2022 is going to be an even better year. So I'm just excited to get to those slides.
Me too.
Yeah, I feel the same.
Great.
I feel like we've got like this momentum that's sort of now picking up. It's great.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, speaking of momentum and dynamics, this is another visualization of the community. The y-axis, the green line, is the community energy. And twice a year, there are those big peaks. Those are the cohort-based weekends. And then in the months between the weekends, the other 10 months that year, there are the smaller heartbeat events, just informal, drop in. There's no asynchronous component. It's just showing up and hanging out. And on the left side is the November 21 weekend. So we're right there in the notch after November 21 in December 21. And we're really looking forward to our 2 weekends, and all the dates and times for the heartbeats and the weekends have already been set for 22. That's going to really facilitate people getting it on the calendar in advance. And then in the background of that community oscillating energy is you and your team. It doesn't have to be a linear line, doesn't have to be yellow either, but that's what differentiates a community of practice and a community of action and a participatory one from just people who like to talk or listen to the same kind of music. We're here because it's not the only way to participate, but it really is an important way to participate. You being on a team, making new connections and having impact through teams, whether that's something that you do totally outside of CW or whether you're on one of our CW teams, which are our committees, and we'll talk about those soon. Any other comments on these?
I think each month is, of course, a little different, even though we have like this consistency every month and this constant contact in Keybase with the cohort and with our teams. But it's kind of reassuring that we know that there's a heartbeat always coming up in the next month.
Yeah, something I'll add real quick about the yellow line is I'm finding the longer I spend with this community, the more collaborations that just naturally arise. Like I'll talk to some participants at one weekend or even join a team with participants at one weekend, and 2 cycles later, these might be people I just feel comfortable reaching out to one-on-one, and hey, I have this idea I want to share with you, or what are you working on right now? That sounds really cool. Like I could contribute to that. I feel like those, for me personally, and probably for several others in the community practice, that those engagements, interactions are starting to really blossom over deep time, which is really fun.
Great. Another view, which every single time we modify it a little bit, is a role-based perspective on the community. The biggest circle is participants. Everyone is a participant in the community, and then there are 2 big on-ramps to being a participant, and those are the monthly heartbeats and the biannual weekend cohorts. Inside of the community, we have different roles. Sometimes we're just a participant at an event. Other times we're organizing or facilitating, which we'll talk more about soon. And then teams are forming inside, outside, on the interface of CW. Anything that you'd like to share about the role-based approach to organizing a community of practice?
Yana, anything?
Well, with the roles, it's sort of, I was thinking about the boundaries within and between roles, but they're also quite transparent, and they're easy, relatively easy to navigate between. You just need to speak up and say, "Hey, I would like to be a facilitator next time." So even though there's boundaries within like each role, you can shift quite easily between and within them.
Great.
And maybe one quick thing, sorry, Daniel, I just want to add to that, is whether you want to, like Yana's saying, connect between, be an organizer and a facilitator at the same time, and maybe on a couple committees at the same time, you can definitely engage as much as you want across all these boundaries. But also, if you have limited bandwidth and you want to contribute to the community, even just picking one committee, like we'll talk about shortly, and just not even having to worry about the events at the moment or any of that, just working on what the committee's working on, that's another great way, as kind of a low barrier to entry way to participate and be an active member.
Yep. And here is, I'll put the link in the chat if you want to check it out. But this is a new deployment, and that is a calendar of all the 2022 events with their dates and times. We only will say times in UTC, just because even the day is different depending on the time zone. So organizers will speak UTCs, and the times are listed as well as the dates in UTC. And then there's the links there to RSVP as a facilitator or an organizer. And they're participants as well. Participants will have a updated website that will make it very easy to RSVP to participate in a bunch of events. So that will roll out in the beginning of 22. But for now, if you're interested in organizing any of the heartbeats or getting involved in organizing the weekend itself, check out that RSVP. and also see the letter to organizers that describes a little bit more about what organizing entails. Heartbeats, organizers meet in the 3 to 4 weeks leading up to the heartbeat. In the weekend, they meet in the 3 to 4 months leading up to the weekend. Facilitators facilitate participation. So it's not a lecture, it's not a speech, it's facilitating participation. And we've seen facilitators just do amazing and different things. We really take a broad view on what complexity can be. And just to show the second way to get actively involved, and then other of you please give a comment. It's on the second tab of the CODA, and that's the committees. So the committees are listed here along with their descriptions. So we have DAO, working towards a Complexity Weekend DAO, website and CRM, Wiki, Gather, that's the spatial chat platform, Teams, scaffolding teams and helping them in many ways, Legal, Art, Finances, Outreach, Onboarding, Facilitators, and Organizers. So each of these committees have a goal, they have a system of interest, and they have synchronous and asynchronous tasks. So if you want to get involved in Complexity Weekend, these are the teams that we're scaffolding through Deep Time. And hopefully they're great opportunities for whether you want to facilitate or organize, or whether you'd rather work on one of these more topical committees. There's going to be awesome ways for you to learn by doing. Either of you want to add something on that?
I think something I'd say is like if especially if you've been at a weekend before, or you're thinking about joining a weekend, and you want to find other collaborators and form a team with them, but the process feels a bit intimidating for now, or it feels like you don't necessarily know how to start. The committees are like a really great way to just kind of wade into the water a bit. They're already scaffolded teams. They're not like normal teams in the sense that they're fully public. This is a fully public community practice, and all the actions we do in these committees have public meeting minutes that people can catch up on and whatnot. So that's a little different maybe than the team experience you might get joining a private team. But a lot of the infrastructure and facilitation energy and the way that the projects kind of are enacted is a bit templated and a little bit of an easier kind of entryway into remote teamwork, to learning complexity by doing, to applying complexity science together from diverse perspectives. Yana, what do you think about either committees or the annual calendar for this upcoming year?
I think they're also a nice way to get to know the community. So if you're kind of not sure about complexity, but maybe you're into art, or you're into building websites, or like you're coming from those spaces, or you want to feel kind of comfortable doing those things, but you're not sure what is complexity, then it's a great place to start.
Totally agreed. So let's turn back to our participants and talk about the participants here, everybody who is paying attention and getting involved. So we asked on the registration form for participants, please pick 5 words in any language that express or describe complexity for you. Yana, you made this awesome word cloud. What do you see, or what do you think it conveys?
Well, we're going to go to space, like that's the whole point of this. We're going to take a rocket and we're going to take complexity, and we're just going to, go out there to where things are even more complex than where they are here. And so that's kind of, the rocket. And we're going on this journey of complexity, and we're going exploring, because that's what you do in a rocket, right? You go exploring. And we've got all these wonderful words here, like emergence, which is just kind of staring at us in the middle, and that's complexity is all about emergence. And like you don't get mushrooms in the forest unless there's complexity of mycelium. So that mycelium is one of those topics we love to talk about in Keybase and in complexity, and chaos as well. So the initial conditions and how they kind of set the scene for what might come, or what will come, or we have no idea what's going to come because it's chaos, and then all the interactions in between, and how we organize ourselves and coordinate or not, and then just figure things out as we go. And so they're kind of the words that sort of they're the biggest words there. So that means most people maybe they came up several times with different people. And maybe, I don't know if we can kind of zoom in a little bit to try see some words that are maybe not so obvious and maybe not repeated as much.
We'll zoom in on the cockpit.
Sounds good. Or incoherent.
Yeah. I'm not going to censor any of them.
When you're in a rocket, you have to, deal with the toilet issues as well. So that's not the nicest task to do, I think, in the space stations either. So yeah, we definitely have to deal with those. And there's a lot of entropy there as well. So
I just like what it bodes for kind of the conversations and the interactions that people have. That's a term there. There's going to be some people who literally showed up at the party with two of the same 5 words as you. It's like 2 of the same 5 pieces of clothing. And then there's other conversations you're going to have, and it's going to be like, wow, didn't know that word. And so that, I think, is reflected not just in the word choice that you all used for this participant RSVP, but we can kind of step back and think about that globally. So here's some information on the participants in our last weekend's cohort. So that was just a few weeks ago for those who remember. And 2 very important axes of diversity are the global distribution in the time zones. We had 160 participants from 56 countries. Every time zone was in the game. And then also so much variation in the levels of familiarity with learning complexity. That's the x-axis. And then applying complexity on the y-axis. And each person is like a pair in this space. So there's 10-10, very familiar with learning and applying, and 1-1, very new to learning and applying. And this is just the total beauty of being in an inclusive community, that everyone has so much to share. Complexity is such a vast journey that we don't have enough time in one life to make it happen. And that's why we're here together, just to learn from each other and recognize that all of these places in our complexity journey are just great, and we get to do it together. Sean, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I'm just when we were looking at the rocket, I'm seeing words like emergence and chaos and nonlinear and unpredictability. Like, these are very general concepts about complex systems. And that's really, some of the concepts we're most excited to explore together, but it can be hard to discuss those things at a very, very generic level about systems. And sometimes it's easier to just focus on specific systems and see how those concepts are embodied in those specific systems, and sharing pattern matching kind of across those specific instances. So whether you are very good at practicing complexity in your day job or moonlighting or whatever you like to do, or you have advanced theoretical understanding of complexity, you have these different perspectives to share. And if you actually can advance to the next slide too, even slide 12, we all come from, and this is again for the cohort for November, from very different domains that we practice in, that we learn in. And complexity is in all of these different systems, but it's great to learn what does emergence look like within this kind of for-profit setup where, it's a food business, like that's a particular system where things are interesting, supply demand of grocery products, like those go stale pretty quickly. How does that affect everything? Can you learn from that and then see what that means for chaotic dynamics and emergent effects and nonlinearities in spacefaring, right? Going back to the rocket, like they're translatable, and that's what's one of the most fun parts about this community is learning those generalities through specifics and comparing them.
Yes, awesome. Well, that's sort of the specifics of us, because participation is literally just the people who are here, and that's the amazing piece. What brings us all together, however? So I will share in the chat a document for those who want to go a little deeper. And if you want to be involved with co-stewarding and co-creating these values, you're kind of already doing it by being here, but there's ways to also take a more active role in that. And I'll just read through them, and then either of you would like on each of the following several slides, Again, some people, it'll be their first time hearing this. Other people will have heard this many times in different versions, but that's the fun of community. So what brings us all together from all those different time zones and backgrounds and levels of familiarity with learning and applying? We have a shared purpose and interest in complexity science. We desire to have impact on co-creative teams and improve our community of practice through feedback, participation, and peer mentorship. And we share core values and the desire to develop community.
Yana, you want to go first?
No, go ahead, Sean.
Sure. I think one thing that kind of speaks to me in this moment is the peer mentorship part of the second bullet. It's one of the beauties of being in a community of practice is that we all have something to offer each other. And when you start thinking about a community as a set of edges in a network, every single node has potential edges to other nodes that can be very fruitful and beneficial to both nodes, whether you're the mentor or the mentee. And that activity is so enriching, not only for the community, but for individuals. And so, we're all here to learn about complexity science by doing, to learn how to apply complexity. But ultimately, we're also here because everyone else in this community is awesome, frankly, and they have a lot of really great insights in all their different domains and perspectives. Like every interaction I have, I'm learning something new from a different perspective I've never really thought of before. And that mentorship, the more participants in this community step up to mentor each other, the richer this whole environment gets for us every time we engage.
Great. Our collective purpose, and then Yana, you get first dibs if you want to say how it's reflecting on you today. We learn complexity science by doing. We serve through deep time, and we include to innovate. Diversity is key.
So about our collective purpose, I guess I don't know. I'm trying to avoid saying the obvious, like we're exploring complexity, but that's what we're doing. And as Sean was saying, like we meet up with different people, we share ideas, and we have there's such a large space to explore and kind of play in, and to bring ideas from all kinds of areas into the same space. You could be talking about some bizarre vegetable that you have found, and then someone starts talking about how to run a government, and you can put it in the same sentence, and somehow it all works. And and I think for me the purpose to be here is to meet other people and to share ideas and kind of go find a way through what we're trying to work on, and try to kind of mash these ideas that we've got and make something else out of them together. So that's been my experience.
Great.
I think just to add to that real quick, I think it's not on here, and this is kind of an evolving set of things as more people get involved and mess with these values. But there are big problems out in the world today, and complexity science and applied complexity has a way to be integrative and learn from all these diverse perspectives and make an impact, a positive, long-lasting impact in a lot of these systems. A lot of old world kind of orders are going by the wayside now, and the new world's forming. And that's not really a bullet yet. Maybe it should be, but we're here also, to not only learn by doing, but to affect by doing, right? And to make the world a little bit better through our efforts, at least for me personally. And we can have that community process to see if it's for enough people also to list it here and in the doc. But that's something that just came to mind for me.
Agreed. It's a time of transition for individuals and for larger scales too. #fractals. So in the chat is our core values. Here you can see them, but please take a in-depth read and reflect on how Complexity Weekend is itself a complex system. And let's just go directly to our participation guidelines, because this is how we really apply it when we're together. As we saw in the earlier slides, many countries, many backgrounds. Some people have been in complexity for 40 years. Other people have not been alive that long. So How do we come together across all these differences and really make something amazing happen? So I'll read them out and then give one thought, if either of you would like, on just how we can make it happen today. And then we'll talk about the specifics of December 21. So adopt a complexity thinking mindset. Communication is key, relations and teams. Embrace technology, but know its limits. Use good audio and visual and gather etiquette. Full participation while still appreciating diverse abilities. And reach out on/to the edges and stay involved.
Yeah, you want to go first?
Yeah, actually, I've got a thought. Thanks, Sean. So I've been recently reading a little bit about tacit knowledge and specifically tacit knowledge transfer, and how do we pass around or share the things we sort of inherently know. And there are often the things that we consider simple. It's like, oh yeah, it's simple to make a cup of coffee. It's like, well, maybe someone who's never made a cup of coffee or a smoothie or whatever you like to drink, for you it's like every day, you don't even think about it, you just do it. But someone who's never experienced it, never done it, it's not so simple. Even if you say, yeah, you just take these things and you smash them together, there's a lot of in between know-how and ability that's not so easy to share or pass around until you maybe do it together and you kind of go through that shared experience together. And so that's why I think participation is really important as part of that process. And even though sometimes maybe things get hard, maybe you get a little intimidated by some of the academic discussion, or someone's throwing some abstract math problems around, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is a little ivory tower for me. So, but then, jump in anyway, and you'll start to pick things up, and that's how we learn.
Thanks. Totally agree. Sean, something quick, otherwise we'll continue on.
I think the only thing I'd add to that is, the last bullet, reach out on the edges. What are we if not the relationships that we're forming in this community? Like, this is a monthly event, but really, is it an event, or is it just a space for these relationships to keep unfolding? That's really, I think, a good way to see it. And there's something to be said about the feeling you get of showing up to your third, fourth heartbeat, however many you like to participate in, a second weekend, and seeing some of the same people, and feeling that sense of camaraderie and community. It's not just a one-off event. This isn't an experience for you to come here to this heartbeat and say like, oh, I've totally got the Complexity Weekend experience now from that one event. I'm good to go now. This is just the beginning. And we invite you to keep engaging, keep participating, and develop deep time relationships. That's really, I think, one of the exciting things about this community.
Thanks. Awesome. So let's talk in the next couple of minutes very quickly about December 21 Heartbeat, just the logistics, and then we'll go over to the Jamboard and have an interactive part. So first, this was a co-organized Heartbeat, as they all are, with myself, Yana, Sean, and Kishore Dicha. So thanks everyone, because it's December. I know it's been a wild year, but thanks everybody who really came together and, as always, built upon the past and did it a little bit unconventionally. And again, if you want to co-organize, it would be so appreciated. Even if this is your first Heartbeat, it's jumping in with 2 feet to co-organize. We're the facilitators. We're the second order cybernetic layer, and it's participatory. There's no type of person who's an organizer. Any verb you like to do, just come do it with us. We'll allocate you those kinds of tasks, and other nestmates will do the rest. So thanks to all the co-organizers who made it happen this month. Also, thanks to the facilitators. Peer facilitation is a value, so facilitation as an archetype, we could have put everyone's image or representation on this slide, but we're really looking forward to the facilitated sessions that Alex Barnes and Nathaniel Edmonds will be doing this weekend. This live stream allows us to include our global community because it's an asynchronous, rewatchable, public artifact. So some of us who will be participating in the second interval are asleep right now. And I know I'm going to be asleep during the second interval, for example. So that's great. But most of the activity is that under the water part of the iceberg. And that is happening all in Gather. So Yana, if you could describe just a little bit about Gather and some of the best ways to use it.
Sure. So when you get in together, as some of you might already be, you'll probably, I don't remember where we kind of end up like at the beginning, but if you kind of feel a little lost, you can find people. There's like the people button there at the bottom in the bottom left-hand corner. You can click on that and you can right click on their name and then you can follow them and then you can find someone. So maybe you might want to follow one of us if you're lost and find where we are, and we'll probably be likely in the top room all the way up the top. You'll find it, and that's where the one-on-one sessions will be happening and a lot of the talks. And if you want to chat or you're not sure what's happening and you just want to reach out to everybody, you can just put a message in the chat and someone will see it. And generally, you can wander around the space. There's a couple of posters, one of mine actually. And so yeah, and if you've got questions, you should be able to find the owner of the poster somewhere around or find them in Keybase. If you need to change your settings, there's like the settings button there in the top left, and you can change the sounds and audio. And if you're having audio problems, you should be able to go there and hopefully try fix any audio issues you have. Otherwise, just refresh, and sometimes that sorts it out. Then if you want to change your name and maybe add your Keybase name there, so you can, if I remember right, you right click on your name and then the option to change your name, to rename yourself, is there. You can play with your avatar as well. That's right next to your name. And then there's the three buttons on the right of your name, and that's the map, the screen sharing option when you're in a conversation with someone else, and the emojis. So use them frequently. They make things a little fun. And and finally, what's also really important, especially like during talks and things like that, to be able to mute yourself, or if you need to turn your video on and off, that's in the bottom right corner. And if you have any questions, hit up the Complexity Weekend at gmail.com email address, and someone will be able to help you.
Thanks.
That's
awesome. Sean?
One quick thing I just want to add, that was a great description, is like what makes Gather so fun is that you can wander around, like Yana's saying, like you can, there's all these conversations that are going to be going on. It's not like a Zoom breakout room where you're just off in space and then you come back to the main room. It's like you can walk up to the couch and pop in and say, hey, what's everyone talking about here? Can I join? Oh, okay, you're talking about a team. Let me go hop over here and see what people are doing. And it's this very organic feeling environment that allows for a lot of self-organization and emergence among social dynamics of our community participants. And this space, this atrium space, is always online and it's fully public. So it's always there. If you want to have a meeting with anyone, you can do it in this space at a coffee table, or, you know, if you, it's always here for the heartbeats every month. So it's just kind of a resource for our community. And I'll just throw the vision out there again. Someday in the future, potentially, we will have one engagement going on at any hour of the day globally. So that would be cool at some point to reach. Who knows how long it might take, but that would be just super cool.
I love the space because if you're in it, you're active and you're willing to connect with other people and learn complexity by doing. And there's millions of people who listen to complexity podcasts. Maybe some of them want to get active. So let's just quickly, in the next 1 to 2 minutes, cover the details. The link to the program is in your calendar event and the email that we've sent you. We're in the live stream section. We're going to go until 15 minutes or about 10 minutes after the hour. And then we'll have a one-on-one session facilitated by Sean. That's where we do some remixing of unstructured conversations. This is just awesome, kind of tensely connects our community. Then we'll have a session by Nathaniel Edmonds on growing, not planning, sustainable societies. And then the final section of the first interval at 22 UTC will be Spotlight Talks and Poster Session. In Spotlight Talks, it's an up to 5-minute chance to just speak to whomever is there. It could be, here's something cool I learned, here's a project I want to start, here's something that I found provocative in this poster I saw, and then we adjourn to posters. The second session, we will hang out and gather before the official start, check your audio visual, just chill. At noon UTC, we'll have another one-on-one session, followed by a collaborative writing session, which has been awesome in the previous Heartbeats, very spontaneous and emergent. Then another Spotlight Talk session, and then a facilitated session by Alex Barnes. So check the program. That's always the most updated single source of truth to go to. Last comments. Really, the most important way to support Complexity Weekend would be providing feedback. So filling out the feedback form at the bottom of the program, and also your word of mouth recommendations, talking to other people who you think might be interested. I know that you don't think that complexity might be up your alley, but just trust me. Just come to this one, Heartbeat, here's the coda, or you love facilitating. Why don't you do it for this community? That's really the most important thing. Additionally, if you would like to support us financially or by sending JPEGs, that can also be provided. Your contributions will be transparently going towards our expenses, which include the gather bandwidth cost and honorariums for facilitators, and then in the future, other things like scholarships and microgrants. Any last note on this before we go to the Jamboard?
One last note on the program is that if you're in the gather space and you made it here on, for the Heartbeat, but you didn't happen to register, you can still get the program link. It's attached to the info booth at the bottom. Where you first spawn, you're above the info booth and you're below the barista stand in the cafe. It's right there as a document. You press X like any other object in Gather, and boom, you've got the program right there. So just in case you don't have any link to it, it's always there.
Great. So let's go to the Jamboard. I just posted the link in the Gather chat, and I'll also put it into the YouTube live chat. So for the next 30 minutes, we're going to be doing this Jamboard. And in Jamboard, on the left side, I'll be resizing the window. That's how you can add in post-it notes and text and anything else. So you can also paste in images, but let's just make this interactive. You're anonymously posting, so have fun and be respectful. And if either of you would like to start with what is your intention while I resize some slides on the stream. What is your intention, Sean or Yana, and why does that matter for complex systems and for Complexity Weekend?
Maybe Sean, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I'm actually writing mine out right now. It's really just to meet at least one new person with a new perspective. That to me is always like a base value I get from pretty much any Complexity Weekend experience. I don't know how many times my mind has been totally opened by this community and it's a totally different perspectives I just never have read about. I just find that so thrilling. And I think one thing that probably brings a lot of us to this table is that excitement we get by learning about concepts that span across fields and disciplines. And so it's always fun for me just to get a new perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important take on it, and being able to go out there and meet someone new, and that's how you get new ideas, right? If we're always going in the same space, which is important for consistency, and to develop ideas further, but to get new ideas and fresh ideas, we need to go into that space of unfamiliarity, and without that, we might stagnate. So there always needs to be something that's uncertain or a bit unpredictable or new or novel, somewhere within our space. For me, I haven't really thought about my intention. I think I'm just going to go with the flow today, and tomorrow I'll be facilitating the one-on-one session and the collaborative writing. I think that was tomorrow. Yeah, so I'll be doing that. So I'm kind of more in this organizing and helping out space. I think that's what I'll be doing this weekend. I think that's enough. But yeah, of course, talking with whoever's showing up and some people I've spoken to before, and yeah, be nice to reconnect.
Awesome. So here we have understand what complexity is, have a conversation about the ethics and practicality of quantified self, listening in to see how complexity is going. Well, if you wrote that post-it and you're in the gather, you're doing much, much more than listening in. And there are people on the side at the dance, but the dance is the dance. And also this just kind of speaks to me about how these intentions that we share with each other, they're like rides that we can go on again and again. Like we have food again and again, and we talk to the people we love again and again. We are always asking about what complexity is, because even if you felt satisfied in your understanding of complexity, then somebody else would have just such a different vector on it. It can be amazing. There's so many fun ones. So we have, okay, get a philosophical shot of espresso. So get a little pepped, get excited, get those adenosine receptors occupied. I wrote beginning, end because, we're starting the heartbeat, but then it's the end of the calendar year, but it's also the beginning of the way that we're going to be approaching 2022. And so it's like beginning and end. Figure out why my friend thought I would maybe fit in this community. The name sounds intimidatingly academic, but my friend isn't like that. Complexity has been an academic endeavor. We don't need to pretend that that wasn't the case, but Complexity Weekend is doing something extremely different. We are by no means even a majority academic. It's just some people, and as time goes on, as more and more people in various adjacent communities realize that they can be learning by doing, and it's okay to be familiar only a little bit with different areas, that's going to be amazing. And there's a whole world outside of academia, and Complexity Weekend is about that. So thanks so much for coming. And
I guess I'm in on that one.
Yeah,
I think one of the things to me that like Complexity Weekend's always done really well that's exciting is it's gotten people who are academic or theoretical about complexity to engage and interact with people who are very practical and have a lot of lived experience with complexity. And I think that benefits both sides tremendously, because people with lived experience, say like maybe a social worker who just inherently is doing complexity through their work, but it might benefit them to hear about a paper or a concept that maybe they haven't come across yet, right? Or the person who's really into theory, yeah, these are interesting ideas and stuff, but which are actually helpful in the world to make a positive impact, or how are they practiced? Where are the systems out there in the world today that are actually using these ideas and doing something with them? I think it's such a fruitful dialogue that the fact that, like Daniel was saying, complexity has been largely kind of academic in the past. I think that's maybe it's the changing world, like we were talking about before, or the need for complexity thinking a bit more. But now it's getting real. It's getting like it's touching way more people now, and you can't just have one side of that dialogue. You do need both to really enhance. But yeah.
Thanks. Let's go to slide 3. These are just some kind of general tips on participating and collaborating online from Monica Kang. Just a reminder to use active listening, and then how does that play out online? Like, keep it muted, give an extra second. It could be the internet lag, it could be cultural, it could be 3 a.m. Just take a breath, give a charitable interpretation, allow others who haven't spoken to participate. Being curious and open, assuming kindness, playing by our strengths, over communicating. We're in a bandwidth limited mode. We don't see our whole body, we don't catch all the nuance, so over communicate, make it clear. Confirm what you think you've heard. Use preferred pronouns for people. Ask quiet participants to speak up if they would like. So those are just a few of the many, many ways that we all can make each other really know that we're welcomed let's go to number 4 and talk about who we are and how we discovered complexity. So, who would like to go first while the live stream and all the participants catch up?
Yeah, I'd like to hear how you discovered complexity. I don't know if I've heard that origin story yet.
Well, I came through it from a bit through systems thinking. So I listened to Donella Meadows' book, Thinking in Systems.
Great book.
And yeah, and that's sort of like from there, I got more into systems thinking. I think I did a couple of courses online. And then a friend of mine told me about this complexity weekend. He was working on a paper to do with complexity. And I said, you should check out this weekend. You might like it. And then, so then I came along and last year, and I've been here for a year now. So, it's been quite nice joining on the weekends and the heartbeats.
Awesome.
Daniel, we've got to start giving NFTs out soon, because I can see the 1-year birthday cake NFT for
Yep. Yep. Well,
Cupcake with one candle.
Yep. It just made me think about the sort of the strange attractions that we've all had in our life, and the ways that we hear people say, well, I was always doing complexity, I just didn't know the word, and how it comes down to the ideas of complexity, which have traditionally been abstract, general, not applied, academic, inaccessible. But then there's the tools of complexity. People might be familiar with agent-based modeling or with systems approaches to modeling. So there's sort of like the deliverables of complexity, but those who believe that they haven't yet reached their full impact will find others who want to find that impact here. And then the piece that I think not just made me draw to the flame, but continue to orbit it, was the people. And it was, for me, being included in the Santa Fe Institute community when I saw, oh, there's more to this than just reading books. There's actually other people, and then we can like make those ideas come alive and reconnect them. And the things that people wrote in the 1900s are amazing and inspirational. And we have different challenges and opportunities today. So how are we going to build the future of complexity and deal with these new ideas, people, tools, challenges, opportunities? What about you, Sean?
I've mentioned this before, I guess, how I discovered complexity. I was in college, and it was kind of just increasing. I did both a physics and an engineering degree at the same time. And it was interesting to just see the role of different assumptions, especially in engineering, where, you'll assume like linearity or equilibrium or, just different things that every time those assumptions were kind of made and then a whole lecture was kind of built on top of them, I would be stuck thinking about those assumptions and be like, are we sure we're building on like the right things here? I almost had trouble paying attention to what was being built on top. And that kept happening more and more and more, to where I kept questioning some of those base assumptions. And when you do question and break through some of those base assumptions, you start to get into more complex system dynamics that people have been questioning for a while. And then it's just a rabbit hole from there, right? You might take some SFI courses, read Donella Meadows' book, many other books about complexity, systems thinking. It all just kind of, I'm wondering if it's, complexity, the personal complexity journey is not just a human thing, like when you're born and you're a kid, like you inherently have a sense of complexity, like, oh, the world, all this interconnection, and I don't even know how to voice it, use words for it or whatnot. And we kind of con ourselves a bit into thinking we know everything that's going on for like a little bit in the middle, and then maybe toward the end you start to embrace it again. I don't know if a personal complexity journey is just a human journey. I'm not sure if they're distinguishable.
Cool. But however you came here, if you're listening and participating, just welcome. This is totally the space for you. This is your niche that you can modify and participate in. It's the only way that we're going to be able to serve through deep time, is just by really making sure that anyone who wants to step in, be a facilitator, be an organizer, months later, years later. It'll be awesome. It's why we have a commitment to our values and our rhythm. Let's go to slide 5. What is something you are curious or wondering about?
I could jump in here.
Yes.
all the things in between. So it was interesting what Sean was saying about physics and engineering. There's so much like causal mechanisms, and they try to find that one thing that makes the other thing happen. But then they're forgetting all the other things that support that. And that's where the complexity is. And that's the joy for me. That one causal mechanism is like when you have a chart and you have like that peak, that's just that peak part. And then there's all these like little ripples, like the heartbeats that we have. And those little ripples, there's a place for them in the system. And if we eliminate them, then we're just having like these little peaks everywhere. And then there's like these massive gaps in between. And I think for me, that's kind of a representation of a lot of mechanical devices and even our digital technologies. The interaction feels like there's something missing because everything is built on those causal mechanisms. So I'm curious about all that stuff that we've been ignoring because physics and engineering and mathematics, they're kind of all interested generally or mostly in these like the peaks. And I'm interested in like what you might, when you do a web search and Google just gives you like your top 10 and you probably just look at the top 1 to 3. I'm interested, that's like the thing at the front. And then I'm interested in the long tail all the way at the back, figuring out like what's not being discovered. What are we not looking at because we're just looking at the bright, shiny, flashing thing in front of us.
I got up on top of that. That is great. I think I've thought about this a lot too, like causality. Like, how often is it the case that there is one true cause for something? Is it true maybe sometimes where multiple causes kind of happen together to make it occur? Or even if there is like a root cause and a root cause analysis, is it the little heartbeat blips that actually led to that root cause occurring? Like causality is such an interesting question.
Yeah. Complex causality. Maybe that's what we can call it.
Yes. So here's a few things that others have written. The ethics and desirability of the singularity or just singularity. Consciousness. So some of the really fascinating questions people have been asking forever. How can I/we, the multi-scale royal we/I, be effectively impactful when there's uncertainty, when there's complex causality, when there's humanity interacting with technology, when whatever our models are, there's the in-between. Like, these are sort of the post-it note versions of the life that we're going to actually be living and the conversations we're going to be having.
Yeah. I'd like to jump back a little bit to consciousness. It's also like awareness. So being aware and being conscious of ourselves and our feelings and the people around us who we're interacting with as well. So I think that's a big part. If we're looking for these in-between spaces, we need to be conscious and aware of our experience.
Yes, great point. So how we hopefully successfully, that's what we expect and prefer, navigate societal change through the coming decades with the combined complexities of environment, tech, and people, blockchain-based distributed ownership in the systems that you engage with. Is this the way forward? Big questions, fun things that we talk about in CW.DAO.
That's huge.
These are these are the open parts. It can be vulnerable to reflect like what we're seeking towards and wondering about. Like, we're open to insight and answers. It doesn't mean the first thing that's going to come in the door is the one that we're going to commit to, but these are people just being really open in their communication. So thanks to those who are interacting on the Jamboard and just showing up and bringing these kinds of energies. Reward systems, incentive fields, nice. Some vector fields that shape micro nudge and people's behavior. How is that going to relate to how we navigate cyber systems, cybernetics?
It's a little bit like going to the forest. Like, I've picked berries and mushrooms and things like that in the forest, and they're kind of like rewards. Like, you go there, you're not sure what you're going to find unless you have your spots, right? And then you go there, and you don't go there just to go pick mushrooms. You go there to enjoy the forest and to get out of the city because it's annoying. And there's, in a way, there's rewards there, but they're not exactly rewards. So I like this incentive field. So the incentive is to go and see if there's some mushrooms there or some berries. And then you might happen across a few. And through that, you kind of get a reward, but it's not exactly. So yeah, I like that. Incentive fields.
Great. Let's march to number 6. So this is where we turn from sort of our intention, our openness, how we got here, what we're curious about, towards how can complexity have impact in real world systems. So that could be, how have you successfully applied complexity or not? Where have you seen it apply or not? Did they use the X word, complexity, or was it more of that implicit, tacit knowledge that Jana was speaking to earlier? How and where would you want to apply complexity? It doesn't mean you're going to set aside the 20 hours a week, just like, where should someone apply complexity? Is it fixing the streets in your local area? Is it supply distribution of something that's vital for survival? Where are we going to apply complexity? I see one that I know Sean wrote. There's our day job, and maybe we're the only person on our team who is in complexity weekend or thinks so much about complexity. And it's like, I can just imagine there's some systems that might be canonical complex systems to people who are kind of familiar, like what we have here, like schools of animals and ecological relationships like predator prey, the market and the information and the dynamics of markets, neural systems and physiological systems, cities, Jeffrey West, scaling laws, hashtag ant colonies. But then there's people who are in these domains and don't take a complex systems perspective, either knowingly or unknowingly. So how do we have impact in those systems?
And I also think with areas that might need complexity and don't have them. So like we were just discussing earlier about causality, and like we're looking at these kind of oversimplified causal mechanisms. And then, there's a frustration there. It's like, no, things are much more complicated. Things aren't so simple. And, that frustration can sometimes come in really handy. So is there any space that you feel like we should be exploring the complexity? Like, people are making things too simple. And we should open it up and go further and explore outwards. And find the complexity that might be lacking.
Let me take a contrarian position here. On your team, having somebody who is not complexity thinking, minded with these, even these canonical systems, if they're overly reductionist, overly linear, that might be necessary on your team. That might be one of the neurodivergent actors in your system that actually helps you reach a higher emergent, state that is better for the performance.
It's definitely that contrast that's the infinite game, and the communication that actually in teams allows the whole group to have outcomes that hopefully can be superior to any individual working alone. And the thought that I always have is like, at Complexity Weekend, complexity is a beginning point. It's not an end point. So especially if you look in the literature, it's going to be like, well, there's attribute A, B, and C of this system. there's the phase transitions and there's the nonlinear dynamics and the chaos. And then in conclusion, it's a complex system. And that's kind of where it ends when thinking about complexity. But complexity is just the beginning of acting. So how do we actually take complexity as like an open door, and then we start to engage with complex systems, explore the counterfactuals, test those assumptions, do it differently, hear from somebody with a different perspective, apply something that hasn't been applied. If it was obvious how to solve these problems, we just wouldn't have them. So we know we need to do something slightly novel. And then when we see complexity as just the beginning of this journey and project, then we're not locked into the finality of some sort of abstract conclusion. It's more like, cool, we're going to fly the complexity flag and then do something together. And then that's just so much more fun and interactive than framing as who's going to race to the complexity finish line first, and then that's the end of the story.
I don't think there is an end of the story, and that's also a great thing about Complexity Weekend is it's you can for your whole personal journey, like we're humans, you have finite lifespan. You're never really going to be an expert in complexity because there's always going to be many other fields you've never even dabbled into or seen that perspective on complexity. You're fundamentally limited, kind of biologically, in your what you can understand in learning complexity by doing and just learning even complexity theory. And that's a beautiful thing. And you can always come back to the weekend and be a different person in that moment in time, have different interactions, have a totally unique, different experience. Just from our perspective, organizing a lot of these, and it's different every time. The cohorts are different every time. The ideas that stick and are interesting, the teams that come out, every time it's unique and different. And that's definitely the case for individual participants as well.
Great.
So I would just like to round that off a little bit with, so as you kind of picked up on this idea of sometimes the simplicity is actually what gets you through. So we're going kind of through a process of expansion and contraction. So we expand, we explore the complexity, and then we simplify it down so into a way that's understandable, and then we open it up again, and we go back and forth through that process, as it's been said, like through deep time. So this expansion and contraction, it's like the way we breathe. We just kind of go through that process.
That's cool.
Effective altruism, including perhaps by continually rethinking effective altruism. That's something that it's a community we know many are overlapping with here. And yes, those who care about doing good and doing it well, I hope they're applying complexity, because otherwise we're going to end up with some greedy local optimization and the tragedies of the commons. So we'll have there's great other ones on here. Understanding complexities changes our stance in the world, and the more people, the more chance we have of... Isn't there a Monty Python skit that ends that way? We'll just have a few more minutes here. So also it's awesome that people have already started to run ahead and add notes. So just to kind of show a few more things, and then again, we'll end in about 5 minutes here. So what's a cool complexity concept? How would you like to teach or learn it? Feel free to add your Keybase name or your contact information here, because we'll come back to this Jamboard, and those who are going to be watching it asynchronously might like to get involved. So Stigmergy, especially in GatherTown development. Beautiful.
I want to talk to that one. Oh, wait, we're going to the next one.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Stigmergy is just too cool. And I learned this from one of the cohorts. This was like one of the words that just everyone was buzzing about that cohort. But Stigmergy is like when you manipulate the environment and interact through manipulations of the environment. So like ants dropping like a grain of sand, and then another ant coming by and seeing that grain of sand already and dropping their grain of sand, right? And then that kind of eventually becoming a spire. It's not direct interaction that caused that spire. It was through the local environment and observations of the environment that kind of were interactions through the environment. And I think just applying that, one thing I love about, and anyone who's interested in this can join the Gather committee, but we build our own Gather spaces for this community and apply, learn complexity by doing in that domain. And Stigmergy is just such a fascinating concept there, where if you learn through some interaction how to make the space better. Well, the next heartbeat, we can move the couches closer. We can add a little private space to the right here, and just see what interactions are affected and by these local environment changes. It's super cool.
Agreed. So there's so many more things that we could talk about. I think what we'll do is we'll go to slide 8 for the last 5 minutes. We're going to be talking about what makes Complexity Weekend an amazing space. So we have desires and wishes on one side, tensions and frictions. You can add other words. You can change it. That's stigmergy. And when you change it, you'll change what somebody else does. Yes, something could be an overlap. And so while people are flipping to 8, I'll just remind that the heartbeats for January, February, and March 2022, and then the weekend for April 2022, all of these we're looking for facilitators and organizers. So yes, you, please get involved. And then also, as we talked about a little earlier, there's the committees. So if you go to that CODA site that I'll repost in the YouTube live chat, that's really one of the best ways to get involved and just to amplify your impact, because you'll be just one of multiple people who really care about making the system better. Okay, so now let's turn to, for the last 5 minutes here, what makes Complexity Weekend an amazing space? Okay, so we'll have an avoid section. Okay. Disrespect, heavy use of jargon, and then like that awareness that Yana spoke to, like what's jargon in your area may not be for somebody else, and vice versa. So it could be something that is good to keep in mind. Having difficult
that's true. Yeah, it can be kind of alienating when people are going heavy into the jargon without explaining it or without giving an example. So it's fine to use jargon, because otherwise we're not aware of the new words, right? So it's okay to use it, but just to have an awareness that people may not be catching on, and it helps to have some examples.
And I think the strategy there, because we don't want to over or undershoot, right? Because, you know about the linear equations, ... How about asking? How familiar are you with this? Or how do you think this connects to that? Instead of just explaining it, can make it interactive and speak in shorter chunks and give other people a chance for feedback. And then you'll always be like kind of tracking where people are at and what their understanding is. And then there's less of a risk of over undershooting. Okay. Confusion, challenging paradigms, that could probably be read several different ways. Avoiding not being open to diversity. So for example, not asking quiet participants to speak up, not being patient in interfacing with a new perspective. Very true. Desires and wishes, joyful curiosity, ambitious goals, effective teaming, novel information generation. Yes, some people, they're looking for a team. They don't know what the question is yet. They don't know the method. They don't know the system of interest, but they want to be on a team. Other people may be just curious. Maybe they want to be on a team, maybe not. Other people may have the team and they're looking for somebody who's curious, or every other possible combination. And that's like the novel information generation. Like there's information in the word that's not in the letters, and in the sentence that's not in the word. It's the juxtaposition and the ordering. And we're about to be juxtaposed with those who are showing up. And that is a very, very rare set of people. Really, it is. So
I want to speak to confusion and feeling dumb. I feel like those definitely aren't avoid these. I think those are like positive tensions and frictions, because that's usually a sign that you're learning, right? If you're totally I am a programmer, and so I know, like from my own experience with coding, and that's just one type of system. But usually when I'm writing like some software or something, I get really confused before it gets clear. And that confusion is like a natural part of the process where everything is kind of getting put on the table and the connections are being made, and then eventually it kind of clicks in it and the confusion goes down. But if I were afraid of that confusion, I would never push through that middle segment to get to the end. And I think that's perhaps an analogy to the way to learn of learning complexity, where when you're out learning new words, new concepts, you're going to feel like, why don't I know this yet? How have I not come across this yet? How, these two things are opposites. I can't put them in my head together. That confusion is something that you might feel like, I want to get away from that confusion. I want to feel safe again. But really, once you power through that, it makes you so much stronger when you come out the other side, and you can integrate some of these experiences into your models and in your way of seeing the world.
There is like this sense of joy when you kind of nailed a program. So like you kind of think, I can't do it. I can't. Maybe you go, you get yourself a drink of water or something, and then you come back and then you're like, oh, hang on. And then you do it. And then there's like this sense of just amazing joy, and it's just delightful. So it's definitely worth, like, even if you have to get up and get away from a situation for a bit and then come back and try again, it's always worth it.
Great.
Mostly worth it. Yeah.
Thanks for the awesome live stream to Yana and Sean and Kishore Dicha for organizing, and to everybody who's showing up, because you all are the ones who make it happen. So we'll take about a 5-minute break, and then we will meet you in the Gather Atrium. It's the link location for your calendar event. It's in the program. It's where the rest of the Heartbeat is going to be. It's all interactive from here on out, and we'll